morning, everyone. Welcome to the Huddle. You may see we have a new face this morning. Sean is traveling for the next few days, so we are excited to welcome Ashley Hayek. She's joining us. She's the Executive Vice President of America First Policy Institute, a political strategist of 15 years, served as, I believe, coalitions director, right, Ashley, for President Trump's 2020 campaign. Welcome.
Get to manage
Welcome
all the folks complaining. It's always fun.
It was great. 45 coalitions in 2020. It was awesome.
Ooh.
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of. You must be very organized.
Yes, I try to be.
I wish I was. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump in.
Probably most importantly, I'm a mom of 5. I have
nice.
My
I love this.
Yeah.
All right. What's the boy-girl makeup here?
It's 4 girls, 1 boy. The boy's in the middle. We say he's surrounded by flowers. He doesn't always agree. But yes, it's 14 to almost 4 years old. So it is a very fun, crazy household and a really fun, stage of life right now.
We could make the rest of the show just about this because I have 1 and I struggle to keep up. You have 5. That's amazing. Like, what is your tip as to working moms? What is the secret?
Nothing matters. Everything is replaceable except for your kids. Everything can be broken, can be replaced, and give yourself lots of grace.
Love that.
That's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, guys, we've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the tonal shift we are seeing from the president right now in terms of Iran. Actually, excited to get your sort of thoughts on all of this since we've been hearing from Sean for so long. We'll talk about some of the pressures that apparently the White House is feeling, politically speaking, from polling regarding Iran and just people wanting to get out and move quickly. We'll talk about China's positioning right now. They're an ally of Iran. They have an economic reason for wanting this all to be over quickly, but are they going to help? And what does that mean for us and our relationship to these adversaries? We'll talk about these Vance versus Rubio stories once again percolating in the headlines. This is sort of the gift that keeps on giving for journalists who like inside buzz. We'll talk about the president's endorsement of John Cornyn that still has not come. Why not? And will it ever come? And we're also going to talk about Gavin Newsom and some opposition that is going to be that is coming out on him from some of his Democratic opponents. Just real quickly, though, let me run through the daybook. 8 a.m., Secretary Hegseth was just on. He's on right now, I think, still briefing. I didn't catch that. Dan, what's the top line? I think you said you were watching that before we jumped on.
The thing that jumped out to me, and it was the first question he got, was, you recall last Monday when he did that first one, he said, we have 3 clear objectives. He did not say the 3 clear objectives this time. In fact, he only really talked about degradation of the Navy. And the first question was, what about the nuclear capability? How are we progressing on that? He did not directly answer that question. And I think we'll get to this shifting. We've always talked about it. Only one person defines victory. And now they're a little boxed in. So we'll see.
And maybe that person doesn't yet know how he wants to define victory. But again, we'll get to that in our first topic. Okay, 9:30 a.m. The Senate Armed Services Committee is going to be getting a classified update on, the situation in Iran. It's also primary day in Georgia 14, which is the special election to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene. 17 candidates, 12 of them Republicans. And nobody, it sounds like, is expected to garner the 50% needed to actually win, including the candidate the president endorsed. So we're expecting a runoff. And there's some thinking that we might even see some Democrats in the runoff on April 7th because it's such a crowded primary. Ashley, does it surprise you that the president was not able to clear this field?
There's 17 people. I think there's a lot of people who run that just want higher name ID or, have their own self-interest. And so this is a very conservative, very pro-Trump district. So I feel very confident that this will ultimately be a Republican hold. But it doesn't surprise me because people jump in to run for all sorts of silly reasons.
Yeah, for sure. Mississippi also primary day there. 78-year-old Benny Thompson, who's been in office since 1993, is going to be facing a primary. He's expected to be safe, it sounds like, Dan.
I mean, pulling a House race like this in a primary is hard stuff. I haven't seen anything. I think people are watching. His primary opponent, I believe, is 35. Yeah. So this is another one of those generational. I think Benny Thompson's close to 80. I think he's 78. So 78, we're going to see. And I think, Ashley, you flagged something that was interesting. If we can pull up the graphic here that we have. So poly markets, we've talked so much about the House recently, and the Senate kind of maybe if things go right. You can see poly market here, the probability or the number of people who think that the Democrats may actually win the Senate is narrowing, which for those of us who went through the 2006 cycle, this is the same kind of thing that started to happen. But Ashley, you flagged comments that Raphael Warnock made recently about the Mississippi Senate race, which is not one that has been on a lot of our radar. I haven't been watching that race, but the fact that Warnock said he's somewhat bullish and keep an eye on it, I find remarkable. Ashley, you think there's any chance the Senate moves, or you think it's still highly, highly unlikely?
I think it's highly unlikely, and I think Republicans will be locked in. Like, we're in a good position on the Senate, and I feel also very confident about Michael Whatley and his tenacity and work ethic. However, the part that really stood out to me from Warnock in talking about Mississippi is that on the left, they have the ability to just double, triple, quadruple down on states that they may not even have a chance in. But that's how you get to a situation like we have in Texas today. And it's because the left is just relentless. That's how Colorado turned so blue when it was, predominantly red. And so I think that this is something we as conservatives have to start thinking a little bit more about the long game and not just live from cycle to cycle to cycle.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Although if Democrats extend their reach too far, they sort of, they wear out their resources. If they end up spending there, they wouldn't end up spending there.
But Rachel, you know what I'd watch? If the Senate looks like it is potentially in danger, if you're the Trump team, right, you have $400 million, do you potentially start saying the House is gone? We are we cannot lose the Senate. We cannot lose the ability to confirm our people.
Such a good question.
So potentially we're pulling a couple $100 million off the map of House races. That dynamic is going to be worth watching as we go into the summer if they make that judgment call.
But here, this is actually a good topic we maybe at some point should hit on this week. But that brings the question of Republicans just want him to spend in general. There is a frustration behind the scenes. Where is his money? Where is his war chest? Please, gosh, get it out. We need help. And I think yesterday the president mentioned he's going to spend $1 million on some House races. That's nothing. That's a drop in a bucket. Where's the rest of it? That's what they're asking right now privately from the folks I've talked to. But we got to move on. This is all super fascinating, and we'll keep an eye on it. Just a quick word from our sponsors, two sponsors today. Guys, if you're trying to get better sleep, I've got a solution for you, and that is CBD from CB Distillery. 90% of their customers say they sleep better with CBD. This helps with energy, it helps with stress, it helps with achieving your goals. And you might be thinking, I'm not into marijuana. That's just not my thing. And just to be clear, neither am I. My only drug, I've said this before, is coffee. I drink a lot of caffeine, but CBD is the non-drug part of the plant. So people say that it's really great for sleep against stress. And if you're looking for things like stress relief, mood, pain after workouts, they've got this great balm. People are raving about it. And you can sort of shop by what you're looking for on their website. If you go to cbdistillery.com, use our code HUDDLE, you'll get 25% off. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code HUDDLE, and you'll get 25% off thanks to them. Dan, Cozy Earth?
All right. Well, so I'm going to do Cozy Earth, and Ashley, you can appreciate this. We have 4 boys between 16 and 12, and I am on the road here with one of them in Los Angeles. And he is now actually almost 1.5 inches taller than I am. He asked to borrow the joggers from Cozy Earth, and he loved them. And he asked if he could order some. And so the highest compliment that somebody can give is when a teenager, a boy or girl, says, "Hey, that's cool. These are comfortable. Get me a pair." So we always talk about the joggers. The bubble blanket, you all know, is bought over in our house. We now have more than one. But it is now officially teenage approved. 16-year-old, go great with your hair, as that's a thing now with boys. And we always talk about the candles and all the wonderful products they have. Go to CozyEarth.com and use our code HUDDLE for up to 20% off. That's CozyEarth.com, code HUDDLE for up to 20% off.
Thanks to Cozy Earth. By the way, I'm still waiting for them to take the material from the bubble cuddle blanket and turn it into a vest. You know how I feel about my fur vests, Dan. Although those are now put away for the season because it's going to be 80 degrees here today. So
wait, you don't have like spring, summer, like you don't like, are you only like fur, the heavy ones? You don't have like a nice spring lightweight vest?
I might somewhere, but it's
Okay.
definitely not going to be a stylish Dan.
That's a
Okay.
very DC dude thing.
Wait,
Okay.
like a lightweight vest, Ashley?
Like
Okay.
vest, like vest 365. That's like very
Finance
DC.
bros type of thing.
Yeah.
Like you don't do the LL Bean, fleece vest, huh, Rachel? No.
Not really my style,
Okay.
but to each
All
their
right.
own.
Each their
To
own,
each
that's
their
right.
own. Yeah. All right, guys, let's jump into this conversation. Start with defining victory. So the president with Iran, he's had this sort of tone change we've seen in the past 24 hours, right? He is, in some ways, it looks like laying the groundwork so that he can take the exit ramp if he wants to, but it doesn't seem like he knows yet when he wants to do that. So he told CBS yesterday that the war is, quote, very complete, pretty much done. He said Iran has no navy, no communications, they've got no air force, and that the U.S. is very far ahead of its initial 4 to 5 week estimate for this time frame. Later in the day, speaking at the Republican conference down in Florida, he called this a, quote, short-term excursion. No longer war, it's excursion. And he said that it's, quote, again, very complete. He used that phrase, very complete, like 3 or 4 times throughout the day. He had prepared remarks, which means that it was, blessed by the inside circle. We're achieving major strides toward completing our military objectives, and some people could say they're pretty well complete. So this comes, guys, after, the administration had initially suggested we were looking at, 4 to 5 weeks. Secretary Hegseth, I think, said over the weekend, I believe it was on 60 Minutes, that this is only the beginning. But there has been some reporting, including the Wall Street Journal overnight, that some political advisors are telling the president that we got to get this wrapped as soon as possible, that they are concerned about what this is going to look like in a couple of weeks. They're already seeing some of the blowback. The challenge here, though, Ashley, is that, as Dan alluded to in the top of the show, they have defined victory as ensuring that Iran can never get, a nuclear weapon, or at least not in this lifetime. Have they done that? Do you think that this is sort of mission accomplished from what you can see in your view?
I think, number one, the stated goals that, from what I have heard, have always been in their nuclear, ending their weapons program, their nuclear weapons program, make it so that there's no ability to manufacture anymore. That's actually what Hegseth ran through this morning in his press conference, and that's what General Raisen Kane also kind of re-emphasized, talking about destroying the drone capability, talking about destroying their naval fleet, 51 ships in the bottom of the ocean, but also notice that they did not hit the oil islands, basically, and allowing for people to actually have access, because in order for Iran to be able to sustain itself in the future, they have to have an economy. And so I think that everything that's being done is being done very strategically, very intentionally. And one thing that's important is, like, the Trump administration, from my perspective, is drawing a very distinct difference between the party of the Bush, Obama, old guard, old legacy, and what, like, the Trump administration with the Vance, Rubio, even Hegseth is looking for. This is vindication for a lot of the young men who are now the new wave of veterans who fought in Iraq, who had friends blown up by IEDs. And so they want to make sure that that Iran is punished, but this is done swiftly. And I think we're starting to see that from the administration. And so Hegseth said this morning explicitly, this will be done on our terms. This will be done on our timeline and only our timeline. It's not going to be done on what the media pundits say, what pressure from other foreign countries say. This will be done the right way and on our timeline. And just one more point. If you remember during the campaign when the president came across General Kane, one of the big takeaways was he said, like, how soon can you get this mission done? He's like, I can get it done, in 30 days, sir. And that was something that was so important to the president, was he put people around him that would execute the mission and do it quickly and efficiently, not have long, drawn-out conflicts like we've seen from the past.
Dan, it feels like obviously it's going to be the president who decides, when are we going to get out? What is the final end game here? And it just feels like even he doesn't know what that is. I mean, you're right, Ashley. Like they had those goals, right? But now the president is talking about taking over the Strait of Hormuz if Iran, continues to cause problems there. Even as he's talking about wrapping stuff up, He has said we've won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. There's just like a lot of sort of contradictory things in the atmosphere there. I mean, like, Dan, from what you've seen, do you feel like the nuclear program is totally decimated? Like, that is the biggest thing that they have cited.
Yeah, no,
got to get rid of the
course
nuclear
not.
program. Got to make sure they can't rebuild, so we don't have to do this again in 3 or 4 years. Have they even done that?
No. Well, look, we don't know. I mean, this is like the first time they hit last July, and they all came out and said that we obliterated it. And then like a couple weeks later, it was quietly came out, both our own intelligence and the Israelis. No, we didn't. Look, I think the problem is Trump, I always say this, he traffics in strength, dominance, and ease, right? Everything is big, bold, and quick. He went to war. That same Wall Street Journal story said that he thought the Iranians would not last very long. He was amorphous when they first announced the goals. Go back to his opening video. What did he say? The people will rise up, or this is your opportunity to rise up. He then, I think after a few days, they had to start putting some meat on the bone. What exactly are we trying to do there? What exactly are our objectives? And now he's boxed in. I think you're right. He knows the politics of this. He knows we're going to get to the next topic here, that others may start coming in to aid the Iranians. If this drags on, it's a problem. And so in one breath, he wants to brag, complete dominance. We're winning. Everything is destroyed. We got it. And then in the next breath, he's like, well, but we have more to go. And so I think the really fascinating thing too is, we were texting about this last night. I have not heard from Israel right now, because Israel has been telling anyone who will listen, the goal is regime change. Flat out, that is it. It is their neighborhood and they don't want them back. If we start announcing we're kind of moving out, I will be really curious what the Israelis say, because this is their chance. We're not going back in 3 months. But
again, just getting back to like at one point, the president did say he wanted to make sure the whole regime was decimated. I mean, so but from Ashley, from your perspective, like what should the administration do? Like if they check all these boxes, but Iran does not have a leader that is particularly America friendly. Is it do you worry at all about a retreat from that area, and that a new, more extreme leader might emerge? What is the right play there?
I trust the administration to do what's in the best interests of the American people. And so I think the bottom line is that the administration has to focus on what's best for America and not necessarily what's best for Israel alone. We have to do what's best for our people, which I think he has proven to do time and time again. So it's going to be interesting to see the next steps. I think that this administration keeps a lot of things close to the vest. The president has also said, I'm not going to tell you my next step. I'm not going to tell you where I'm going next. You're going to have to wait and find out. And so I think there's a little bit of that happening as well.
Or he'll say contradictory things. I think he does it intentionally. I really do. He loves to throw reporters off and be like, "Oh,
Rachel, can I just throw something out? Can you
totally
imagine? Can you imagine if at the end of this, let's say it's in a week or 2 or 3, the Iranian regime is still the whatever contours of the old regime is still in place. We all agree their nuclear stuff is buried in mountains and scattered all over the country. So over the weekend, we were talking about going in with ground troops potentially to secure and extract it. So let's say we don't do that, okay? So they still have nuclear material. And now we're going to get to the next topic about others supplying them arms and cash. We could turn, what did we destroyed their Navy? Okay, great. But we didn't get to the main objective, which is they're trying to get nuclear weapons to terrorize the neighborhood and the world. This would be remarkable if he declares victory and says that's it.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's really hard to predict this president. So, okay, let's go to China. So China is going to be hosting Trump for a state visit in just a couple of weeks. And just in time, we're starting to see headlines that they're going to be potentially helping Iran with the war. CNN has this story that U.S. intelligence shows China may be preparing to supply Iran with financial assistance, spare parts, and missile components. But there's this other piece of this, and that is that Beijing, you would think they wouldn't want to extend this because 40% of their oil comes from Iran, and they need Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz for economic reasons here. That's probably why they're obviously calling for a ceasefire as soon as possible. Actually, how do you think this shapes out, given that, you've got China here? We've also seen reports about potentially Russia giving information to Iran about, U.S. troops' whereabouts and asset locations. How are our adversaries trying to use this to come at us?
I would argue that our number one strategic enemy is actually China. by far. And I would also say that China has absolutely no interest in helping Iran, because as long as we are engaged with Iran, we are not focusing on China. And so they have no desire to try and provide intelligence or infrastructure or weapons or anything, because it serves them at this point in time. It takes the threat off of them. The president, if you look at all of the actions to date, and you match it's the 2026 National Defense Strategy that Hegseth put out at the beginning of this year. I mean, this is all pretty much textbook in terms of what he's laid out and what they're doing with Venezuela, with China, with Iran. And so I think one of the big sections, one of the very first sections on China is peace through strength, not confrontation. And so by the actions the administration is taking in Venezuela with Iran, I think it is demonstrating to China, this is our capability, and now let's have a conversation.
Dan, what are your worries on this?
Oh, I think this is look at history in the last 50 years. What happened in Vietnam? The Chinese and the Soviet Union were coming in through the back and supplying the Vietnamese. Go to Afghanistan. Our CIA went in to Afghanistan to bog down the Russians. Look at Iraq. The Iranians went in, right? Providing IEDs and other things to bog us down. The history of these conflicts are that your adversaries say, how can we take advantage of it? So the fact that the Russians, on the one hand, are talking to us about trying to end the war in Ukraine, but on the other hand, supplying logistical information, as you say, assets, like some of those targets that were hit around the Middle East, turns out that's where we had air defense technology. The fact that China could potentially start providing missiles and cash now to the Iranians, to me, like, this is a problem. The longer you stay, what is the end game here? Keep going back to it. Are you going to put boots on the ground? It's another reason that I think Trump's sitting there thinking we got to get out of this.
One of the headlines in Axios this morning was not world war, but world at war, noting that 20 countries are now involved in all this. Last thing on this, I'll say, Ashley, what keeps you up at night when regarding this war? I mean, I know you said you trust that the administration, they know things that potentially we do not, but like, what is it? Are you concerned about the political blowback? Do you worry that this could be extended into a months-long, maybe years-long campaign? What is it that keeps you up at night on Iran?
I will tell you, I sleep a lot better knowing that President Trump is in the office as opposed to Kamala Harris. I'll say that. Like, I look back at
you're probably not alone on that one, Ashley.
Well, and I look back at the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the 13 service members who died, and how sloppy it was and what a disaster. And my husband is active reserve. And so those are the things that I think about. And I'm actually grateful to have Pete Hegseth. I think he's done a very good job as our Secretary of War. And I actually feel very confident in this administration. I know that probably sounds very mouthpiecey, but as a service member's spouse and looking what could have been and the direction we're going and everything, I highly encourage everyone to look at the National Defense Strategy. It's very clear what the objectives are of the administration.
Let's move on. We'll talk a lot about Iran this week, but let's move on to some insidery buzz here in Washington, the Vance versus Rubio story that, again, like I said, it's never ending. But over the past 48 hours, we have seen not one, but two stories about how President Trump has been engaging people privately who they like better for 2028. Apparently, there was a group of 25 donors recently. I think it was like the night. It was like a fundraiser the night that we first started bombing Iran. He asked them, who do they prefer? Overwhelmingly, the room said Rubio. Now, we should be fair to the vice president here. Those donors are not exactly his people. Like, he's more of like the MAGA base, the MAGA heart, as opposed to the wealthy donor class. But look, I mean, Ashley, Sean often says that, like, the president always asks people how people are doing. Like, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. But everyone has believed JD will be the guy in 2028. So should he be worried that the president is asking people if it should be somebody else entirely?
I think that we're just getting started. Like, we're going to start seeing more of this chatter post the midterm election in November. That's when, as the presidential starts gearing up, I think it is like lifetimes between now and the presidential election. And so for him to ask questions, I think that's a good thing for the party. I think that he values input. He does this with all of the things, all of the topics. And I wouldn't count Rubio out at this point either.
That's so fascinating to me because, like, I have always been I mean, I still think it's going to 95% chance it'll be JD, but I could have been the vice president, not JD. But it's just so fascinating to me. So you think it's really up in the air at this point, 2028, and who's going to be the nominee?
Well, I have thoughts who will be the nominee. However, I think that there will be campaigns. I think that there will be a lot of discussion moving forward and what's in the best interest of the America First, movement overall.
Dan, let's have a little fun with this. Thoughts on these stories?
Yeah, my
percolating
first
now.
thought
I mean, this is all theory, we should say, but
of course, my first thought is why did this appear in the Wall Street Journal the way it did, with some of the specificity about certain things that Trump has been said, and my first thought was all these stories about JD in the last week keep having this little JD did not think this was a great idea. But if they're going to go in, go big, go right, etc. I don't wonder if Trump is like, hey, look, dude, you need to be out fighting for me. Always, 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 always. That is what Sean is always talking about, is like the most important thing to Trump, period. He'll wave a lot of ills off if you are 100% fighting. And I just wonder, as Iran's hitting the rocks a little bit and it's getting turbulent, if this is a little bit of a passive aggressive shot at JD, like, dude, you better get out there full throttle right now defending this, because you're not, right? In interviews more, he talks about the economy more. I just wonder if this is the White House.
Yeah, I mean, but
a
that's
little shot
also
across the bow.
I mean, to be fair to him, I mean, White House insiders want the president to be talking more about the economy too, and the fact that Vance is more on message than maybe the president. Maybe that's because that's what he's supposed to be doing. Well, but, he was asked about, the president was asked about this yesterday. He was asked about Vance, and he said that Vance was, quote, less enthusiastic about attacking Iran, though he was still quite enthusiastic. Again, the president
says the quiet part out loud. It's the beauty of Trump. He doesn't hide.
The other thing about this is that when the president is upset with somebody, you can kind of get that sense. I didn't get that sense from this. He knows where Vance is on a lot of this stuff.
But Rachel, the point is he's making Vance sweat a little bit. All these stories is just, hey, I don't know what I want to do. And so if you're JD's people, your first thought is, how do we get this to stop?
Ashley, how should Vance sort of navigate this? Because reporters super obsessed with the story know that he is not he's been sort of this anti-interventionalist for a long time, skeptic of military engagement. How should he how should he change something? Do you think has the pitch perfect tone right now, or what do you think?
Well, I think MAGA does want to talk about the economy. I think the base wants to talk about the economy. The base wants to talk about how are the president's policies helping me today. And so that's what JD Vance did yesterday. So while I think, the chatty class is saying, oh, well, he's not doubling down on, the foreign policy, his job as vice president is to also go out into the country and talk about the president's policies and how they're impacting the American people, being the economy and affordability and, are Americans better today than they were, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, et cetera? And that's what he's doing. So he's doing what he should be doing. He's doing the right thing. The other thing is, I do think that there is an infatuation with trying to divide from the media, from trying to divide Trump's cabinet.
Not just the media, though, to be fair. I hear Republicans talk about this all the time. But continue. Yes, I agree with you.
Sure. And Twitter class and all of that. But trying to divide the cabinet. And it's a very unified cabinet. And if you look at the turnover in the first Trump administration, there's a lot of lessons learned. And he's done an incredible job. Susie Wiles has done an incredible job of keeping the team together and really mission focused.
Yeah. I mean,
I think, Rachel, I think, Ashley, you make a great point, which is the media loves a horse race and they hate a coronation. Go back to George W. Bush when they started building up John McCain because they didn't want this steamroller going down, or Hillary Clinton. They look for stories of division. They look for stories of the underdog, somebody who could come knock off, the big 800-pound gorilla. And that's another challenge JD's going to have to manage.
Yeah, it's totally true. And, nobody loves a palace intrigue story more than me. I love them. But I have not written about tensions between these two because, there just aren't any. I mean, I have talked to people over and over again about this. Of course we were sniffing this out a year ago. And like,
yeah, but
everybody
Rachel,
says that, and I
so-
know I know there's a natural tension between what is happening right now, but they're actually friends, right? And like, generally speaking, when you talk to people who are very close to the inner circle or, you know, top officials, like the belief is that it's going to be Vance and then Rubio, like they'll run on a joint ticket. I'm sorry, what were you saying, Dan?
But here's one thing though, that like you can't use a year ago as a reference point. We've always said that at some point, look, if Donald Trump is really popular, JD Vance can start measuring the drapes today, because it'll basically be his third term, or, you know, depending on fourth for those who want to view it that way. What we've always said is that if Trump is not popular, JD Vance is going to have to look for some way to say, I will not be the third term. I will be my own person. I will be JD Vance.
Yeah.
And so that tension has always been like under the surface, because we all know the moment you're not 100% on Team Trump, Trump will flip on you. And so for Vance, I keep saying somebody keeps leaking in all these stories that Vance has said he did not love this. And I can't fathom it sits well with Trump. That is out there.
Let's we will see. We will see. Let's move on to Texas. So we talked a little bit about this yesterday, the president holding out his endorsement of John Cornyn to try to force Senate Republicans to pass the Save America Act. Not only that, but now Don Jr. is reportedly pushing the president to back Ken Paxton, which is super interesting. This very much a nightmare for John Thune, who has been working for months to try to get the president to endorse John Cornyn. But actually, like, where do you come down on this? Like, should the president stick with Cornyn, who the establishment thinks is more sort of electable to sort of keep Texas red, or go with the firebrand? And are there risks for him endorsing either one of those guys?
I don't think there's any risks necessarily for the president on this one. I will say that it's pretty clear that the MAGA base would really like to see Ken Paxton, but I think the larger conservatives want to win. So what is the path to victory, and what is the path to having to expend not maximum resource because the House will take so much of a priority this year? So that's how I would kind of look at this. It doesn't surprise me to see different teams lining up behind different candidates. I mean, who knows? He could come out with an endorsement today. I don't know. But I think I personally thought it was a little soon because, again, he likes to hear the different opinions. He wants people to perform and see what can be delivered. And then maybe later in the week, we can see an endorsement.
Do you think if he endorses Cornyn that Cornyn will win that primary? I mean, Paxton has said he's not going down without a fight.
And a poll out today has Paxton up 9.
Yeah. But the president's endorsement has been like very important for most of these primaries. Texas is maybe a little different. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, sorry. Were you asking Ashley?
Well, I was just going to say,
asking Ashley, but I'll get your thoughts on that too, Dan, in a minute.
But if you look at all of the candidates in Texas that the president got behind, they were successful in the primary. So I think his endorsement does carry a significant amount of weight. And, you know, if the president were to endorse Cornyn in the primary, I wouldn't be surprised if some of those MAGA Republicans didn't necessarily want to vote for him. They might just stay home, which also directly impacts Paxton as well. So I think the president's endorsement is gold in this race.
I think the fascinating thing is every day that goes by is good for Ken Paxton that he doesn't endorse, because, you know, your story of Don Jr. Now there's a poll out that shows Paxton up 8 or 9 points. The more kind of he can throw into the ecosystem to say to Trump, hey, just think a little more about this, or think about your timing. Because at some point soon, if you're the Thune folks and all the outside super PACs, how long do you wait until you start dropping money on this race? At what point do you say Paxton is, let's say their own internals have it tied? I think, Ashley, you'd probably agree. In a special election, usually only the diehards turn out, especially when it is right after Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So how long do you wait for Trump? Do you just say our game plan is Trump's endorsement and that should end it? Because I think Ashley's right. His endorsement in a state like Texas is probably pretty strong. But every day that goes by, I just keep asking, why is he waiting? Like, what is he waiting for now?
Yeah, I just keep...
And I can't believe it's the SAVE Act, that's truly what he thinks. Like, what if a DHS bill passes tomorrow? Are you really not going to sign it?
No. Like, he said yesterday he would definitely sign that.
But that's my point, right? So, like...
I feel like I do think he's really fired up about the SAVE Act. Like, I do think that is, like, he is trying to use any
It's red
anything
meat
for
to the
leverage
base.
to try to pressure them into doing this. I'll say it again. I don't think the Senate's going to do it. So I do wonder is it counterproductive for them to just keep sort of pounding on this drum. But
this is an
anyway.
80% issue. It's an 80% issue across demographics that unites the party. It's something that a lot of voters are very much fired up about, that they want to feel like they're heard. They want to feel like their vote matters, especially when you look at the midterm map. It's very different than the presidential. You're looking at states like New Mexico, California, New York, New Jersey, and people want to know that their vote is going to count. And by people, I mean both on the left and the right. So I understand why he's putting the eggs in this basket. And he also added men and women's sports to the SAVE Act, is what he talked about yesterday. So like these are all 80% issues. These are our, America First policies.
Yeah. One other thing to flag in this sort of election segment, we didn't talk about this at the top, but the Mississippi Senate race shaping up to be like a crazy story. So Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith is the one that's up next or this cycle. And apparently the Dem primary today, we're expecting a guy to emerge that she actually blocked from getting a judicial nomination. And it would have been a lifetime judicial nomination. And he is now coming after her for her seat. Like, I don't think he'll be able to defeat her. She's not a great candidate. I will say I've interacted with her on the Hill quite a bit. She's very, very buttoned up and very, very careful. But it's still Mississippi, still red. But any thoughts on that before we move on to Newsom, guys?
Well, I think we as we talked about kind of when we went through the day book. Right. I mean, I think the fact that Raphael Warnock is saying keep an eye on it. I don't know. You're right. In a vacuum, a Democrat in Mississippi has not happened since I think Jimmy Carter. But
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, well, you know what? Look, at the end of the day, Ashley, you'll probably agree. Let's see if they put money in there. Yeah. If outside, labor and others start saying we're going to, stand up an independent, get out the vote operation, money talks.
Yeah, she's probably Cindy Hyde-Smith is probably one of the only Senate like lawmakers in the Senate who like literally will not engage with like press at all. It's like the strangest thing. She'll walk by gaggle of reporters and nobody even asks her a question anymore because she like just has been shutting people down for so long. Not that I'm saying like obviously Mississippi voters want to know what you did for them, and that's exactly what they're going to be voting on, not on their engagement with the media. But anyway, let's move on to Newsom facing a Democratic opposition. So Democratic opponents of Newsom, who very much considered the very early frontrunner for 2028, trying to take him down a notch, not just by going after him, but his wife. There's this California Post headline, Gavin Newsom's wife pushes weird gender films into California classrooms while paying herself a fortune. This story is about this sort of squishy relationship between his wife, Jennifer, who has these films about, quote, toxic masculinity that praise her husband, that the state is then pumping out. And meanwhile, she's making hundreds of thousands of dollars on some of these films. Anyway, Dan, how damaging is something like this for Newsom in a primary, would you say?
Well, it's not as itself, it's not too damaging. But the bigger thing is twofold. One, Newsom is the front runner. I mean, you can argue it's Newsom and Harris, but most people kind of still have a lot of questions about Harris's abilities to ultimately go over the finish line. But Newsom, they do see. So one, you are now starting to see little kind of opposition hits to try to bring him down a peg. And the second thing is, and I forget who it was online who said this recently, but every Democratic elected official who served through what I'll call the kind of DEI era, the woke era, most of them have made statements and done things that today are going to be an albatross around their neck. And this is a just good reminder. We talked last week about the Tallarico videos of him talking about opening a welcome mat at the border and abortion for gender affirming, kind of what is pretty crazy stuff. That Newsom, as the governor of one of the most progressive states in that era, during that era, there is a lot more there. And I think you're going to start to see people just keep dropping these little tidbits. And I think, Ashley, you flagged, he has announced they're going to spend, I think it's $19 million on a kind of war room response to try to start knocking this stuff down because they know how deadly that this could become.
Yeah, I mean, it's a New York, you just mentioned the New York Post story, $19 million to target, quote, misinformation about California, to rebrand the state as a great place to live, work, and invest and visit, et cetera. I mean, I would think that these would be potent. He's using taxpayer money between both of these stories in some ways to sort of rehabilitate his image or, boost his image.
Well,
Like
no,
Here's
no,
Why It's
no.
Filmed.
The stories about the videos are not. I mean, look, they were promoting DEI kind of initiatives, and she was making the material that they were doing. So it wasn't. It was. It's less, I think, that she was paid. It's more what they were doing. He's in the videos talking about toxic masculinity.
But it's a third of the nonprofit budget went towards her salary. A third. That's that's insane. And also, she would be very offended. She's first partner, not wife. She prefers spouse and first partner, according to all of the office. She renamed the California First Lady's office to the Office of the First Partner. But first of all, number one, there's not a single policy idea that I think has resonated with the American people out of California. In 24, when America First Works was on the ground, our message was very clear. Don't California America. Don't take the policies from California and make that the policy for the rest of the country, because you have the highest homeless population. You have a massive state budget deficit. In fact, Governor Gray Davis was recalled for a third of the deficit that Newsom has today, and it's insane. And you look at the bridge to nowhere, the high-speed rail to nowhere. You look at Palisades. I mean, that's a whole other topic. I'm convinced that part of the reason they won't issue the permits is because it's so toxic down there. I mean, this state has fundamentally failed on every single issue. And the fact that he is the number one choice right now is absolutely mind-blowing. But I look forward to the competition.
Dan, what is going to be Newsom's biggest liability? Is it the state of California in general?
Yeah, I've always said this. I've always said that the number one thing is exactly what Ashley just laid out, which is what they started doing to Kamala Harris, which is Newsom wants to say, look at California, it's a shining, the sea on the whatever the Reagan was, shining light on the hill. And the right is going to say, yes, you're right. Let's elevate California. It has homelessness, or, the businesses that have moved to Texas. And I have heard Newsom in podcast interviews give all the answers as to why those are all not true. The problem is it takes him 5 minutes to say what Ashley said in 5 seconds. And to the average person, homeless, crime, the fires, that is their visual, whether it's fair or not. And so his Achilles is the left has always thought that he was a phony and just ambitious. And to the right, they look at his home state. It's J.B. Pritzker's problem, too. And they say, I don't want that. It's high taxes and woke stuff. So he is going to have to, at some point, he trolls really well, right? He has won that troll game on our side of the aisle. But he is going to have to put meat on the bones about why he wants to be president and what his vision is, and deal with all these incoming attacks that are now starting from the left.
Meanwhile, Kamala's out there doing her thing, continuing to sort of rally the troops behind her. No one taking shots. Well, I can't say no one taking shots at her. We've seen a number of stories with Democrats blindly saying they don't want her to win.
Well, look, their shots at her are, you're a joke and we don't take you seriously, so we're not really attacking you. But I keep saying this. I've said this for a year. 1, she really wants to run. 2, she's doing everything to put herself in position. And 3, they look at the polls, they look at the crowds, and they look at Black women, and they keep saying we don't have a chance. The Beltway hates us. And they're going to try to flip that and say the establishment hates me, which is remarkable that she's going to try to become the outsider. But that is kind of their game plan. It's like, great, you all hate us.
Ashley, who do you think it will be on the Dem side?
Stop smiling, Ashley.
This makes me laugh. But Gavin Newsom, I think, is the top contender in 2028, no doubt. But he has not really been tested, because there has not been super strong candidates running for governor against him. He hasn't really been tested on the national scale. He's kind of been insulated. And so there's a lot of scandal, and there's a lot of, just policy issues that he's going to have to face. And I'm actually very curious how he's going to be able to handle that.
Vance Rubio versus Gavin AOC, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. Okay, guys.
By the way, don't discount that. I know this is online a little bit, but Kamala Harris hiring Brian Phelan
Oh yeah.
That was not, that is somebody that is very
Yes.
much has
Yes.
2028 on her mind. Yep.
That is such a good nugget. And for those of you who are not familiar with him, he's like a longtime Senate Democratic, leadership aide, like super in the know. Like what was that? What was the judicial related advocacy
Yeah,
organization he ran on the outside?
the Supreme Court stuff, getting I forget
Yeah.
what the name.
Anyway,
Yeah, confirmed at the end of Obama, and then he ran the stuff against the Trump people.
right.
I mean, look, he's been around. I know him. He's been around for a long time. He's a really smart guy. But when you're thinking of running, one of the biggest things out there is staff recruitment right now. You are building your team, and people like Brian could go work for almost anybody. So you try to lock people down to preserve your options. And he worked for her in 24, and that is the sign of somebody who is still thinking, I want to do this.
Yep, absolutely. Let's take some questions, guys. Okay, Curious Observer asks, the reason behind weight quarrel between the Pentagon and Anthropic is becoming clear now, given Eric and Don Jr.'s new drone venture and its connections with the Pentagon. How long before an oversight committee has hearings regarding the Pentagon and this new venture? Maybe day 1 or 2 of a House Democratic takeover, Dan. I mean, this will be something they look at. We've talked about oversight quite a bit. That is coming, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think the bigger issue is the reason that they're saying that they want to move Anthropic out publicly is that they're too DEI. The reason that it's being reported privately is the real reason is that Anthropic has concerns about allowing the AI to make a judgment about in military matters of lethal force, that the algorithm would say, kill that, target. And they want some sort of human check on that verification. How are we going to use AI tools? To what extent are they going to be independent and not have human oversight? And also, should we be making judgments that we're not going to use maybe the best AI tool that's embedded in our government because they're, quote, DEI? Like, to me, it's like, do they provide the best service to enact the mission, not what is the kind of headline? Because there's another headline that we turned down Ukrainian drone assistance, over the summer, because they just basically hate Zelensky and they thought he was hustling them. And now they realize it was a mistake. So.
And now they're purchasing those.
Lock, stock,
and barrel. Purchasing that technology. It sounds like
possible. Yeah.
Right. Any thoughts, Ashley, on the Anthropic, the DoD's war with Anthropic?
Well, I don't think that Anthropic was looking. I understand the concern about having a person who makes the decision and not AI making a decision. I think the conflict was that one of the tech bros wanted to be the one who made the decision, and that's not who should be making the decision. It should be the Department of War, who has the ultimate chain of command and authority on this. So I think if we're in a big conflict, it was so interesting because this happened right before everything broke with Iran. And the last thing I would ever want is to be like, okay, we're going through this exercise, and now we have to go call, the tech bro at Anthropic to see if we can actually move forward. And that's absolutely absurd. So I'm very much in line with what the Department of War decided on this.
And there,
I just add one other thing, though, which is we just talked about Newsom's wife being paid a couple $100,000 to this question, though, of oversight. You better believe they're going to go look at the Trump family. The fact that Eric and Don have now started a drone company to sell to the Department of Defense, this is where the bar has so changed. I mean, I hear you, Ashley, that like, it's outrageous that she made some money, but like his own kids are popping up businesses and selling that deal with the government. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're going to make more than a few $100,000. I bet that.
I just keep going back to, it's going to be interesting to see where exactly they focus their energy, because there's just, their list right now is very, very long, and they're not going to be able to do investigations into everything. So it'll be interesting to see where they focus. I do think though, the money is going to be a big part of it for sure.
One of the ways they're going to pick this is rival companies of Don Jr.'s business interests have been providing information to the committees. And so the paper trails and specificity is already in the hands of staff. Now, it may not be true, some of it may be, but that's one of the problems.
That's interesting, Dan. I feel like I did not know that. It makes sense. It's very Washington, but
course.
wow. Okay, well, let's take another one. Okay, question. Can they use reconciliation to pass the SAVE Act?
No, it's not germane.
Yeah, it's not.
You can't.
Reconciliation, you have to, it's a tool, fast tracking tool to get around the filibuster. You have to have like a significant budget.
A funding mechanism.
Yes, offset, either increasing, decreasing, et cetera. So no, I mean, I think there has been some chatter about this over the past 24 hours. Part of me, frankly, wonders if this is sort of Senate Republicans throwing out an idea to try to assuage or make the president feel better because he's so adamant about the Save America Act. But ultimately, there's just no way that they can do it via reconciliation.
I wouldn't put it completely off the table.
Totally, 100%. It's definitely off the table. The question is, do they do a dog and pony show to try to make the president, like, try to act like they're doing something for the president?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of conversations about how to bring this forward.
Yeah. Okay, let's take another one. Look at us moving through questions quickly today. Okay, hi Bumps. Question, how big of an issue will Israel be in the next election? Will the candidates be asked about their support for Israel during the debates? How healthy is America's relationship with Israel? Dan, you've talked a lot about this, how this is going to be a huge issue in 2028, don't you? Yes.
Well, I almost wonder, Bumps, if this is not 28, but 26 in Senate and House races, because Ashley, you said it earlier. Ultimately, it's about doing what's best for the United States. And I don't think this is just a Democratic headache anymore. I think this is going to be a huge problem for both parties. That Wall Street Journal story about Vance Rubio makes the point that a lot of the Jewish community doesn't like that Vance is friends with Tucker Carlson. And I think right now, with Iran, the idea of, are we doing what is in our best interest or in Israel's best interest, is a legitimate question. Because I can tell you why Israel wants regime changed. I can tell you exactly why.
And on the Den side, I feel like you're increasingly seeing Democrats who say, I will not take any money from, any sort of organizations that have a Jewish or not, like, or Israel link of some sort. Like,
totally.
It's becoming like a requirement that you tell the base this. Anyway, Ashley, go ahead.
I wouldn't be so distracted. I think this is a niche issue. I think at the end of the day, the majority, like, this is like a 3% issue, right? The majority of the people are going to focus on, like, the economy. How much does it cost to fill up my car? Yep. Are my groceries cheaper? Is my community safe? And so I think the reason, like, if you listen to the president's speech yesterday, he talked about, number one, the economic policy, number two, healthcare policy, because that 80% of the healthcare decisions made are made by women in their households. So you'll hear a lot more about healthcare policy. And number three, are our communities safer? And those are going to be the driving issues. I think this is kind of one of those fringe issues that may move some people, but won't be a deciding factor at the end of the day.
And just a reminder, Bumps, that Sean has mentioned that, he thinks Israel itself, like, needs to do a better job of, coming up with a better message to reach, both parties. I mean, he's talked about how there's been a change regarding, perceptions of Israel in the Republican Party. And, like, part of that is, like, them needing to figure out a better way to get out their message. What is their message, et cetera. So, yeah, I think it's just something really interesting because it's like, it's you're right, Ashley, it's not going to be the thing that people vote on, or at least not most people, maybe some people in Michigan. But it's interesting because there are questions on both sides. Okay, let's take another question.
That may be.
Okay. Chat here. Senate goes Dem and JD resigns. VP Newsom popcorn.
Wow. Okay. That is.
Somebody had a lot of coffee this morning.
Someone had more than me, apparently. Yeah.
There's not much to say. I think this person's
unlikely. Unlikely.
Do we have another question? Okay, Republican lady, good morning. Question, is there an anti-incumbent vibe that crosses party lines? If so, does that make Roy Cooper an incumbent-like candidate and thus vulnerable? Does the murder of Irina Zarutska damage him?
I do think it cuts across both. I mean, I think the anti-incumbent, to the exact reason that Ashley just said, which is people are still frustrated, angry, with the state of the economy, with inflation, with everything that's happened the last 6 years. So when you run for a different office, yeah, it could be that Roy Cooper says, that people feel like, hey, you're part of the problem. Michael Whatley being RNC chair, people may say, hey, you're on the team of the president, and that's a problem. So it is not a good time to be an incumbent, for sure. It's a challenge.
I will say, I thought the murder of the Ukrainian refugee, Zarutska, I thought, in any other election year, that would be a bigger thing. Between DHS being shut down, between Dems not knowing that they want to continue to fund the war, or saying they might, block funding for troops, those things, in any other election, would be, I feel like, a huge liability for Republicans. We're not even talking about what happened to that poor girl
for Democrats?
anymore. I'm sorry, should I say Republicans? For Democrats. It's just, again, the focus has shifted so much toward affordability, and people are not talking about that as much. But repeat offenders, that's a real issue, and it could be
But
an
I just
asset
think,
for Republicans,
Rachel,
but yeah. Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that Democrats took from the 2025 midterms was in New Jersey, in Virginia, Republicans tried to talk about these issues, and it just did not resonate.
Yeah.
And
that's
that
what I'm
is
saying.
it's always an issue when you try to run the last campaign in the future. And that the question is, can they go to that playbook again?
Yeah.
Or do people say, you're not talking about what I want, which again is the deadly problem with Iran, politically deadly problem. Nobody in this country was walking down the street 2 weeks ago saying, if we don't proactively invade Iran, I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. Nobody. And that's their problem. We chose this, but in Tel Aviv, they walked down the street saying, if we don't deal with Iran soon, I'm going to have trouble sleeping. That's absolutely true. There's your problem.
Ashley, what's your take on this?
My take is, if I'm a mom in North Carolina, I'm thinking about, am I going to be safe on public transportation or not? I'm not thinking about a conflict overseas. I mean, there might be parts of the state, like Fayetteville or whatever, but overall, I think that this will be a big issue. And if you just go back a couple short weeks ago, when the president gave his State of the Union speech, and the Democrats refused to stand up for these families. If I'm Michael Whatley, I'm pointing to that all day, every day. And I'm also pointing to Roy Cooper's record, because the record is what's ultimately going to hurt him at the end of the day.
Yeah. We talked a lot about that moment, because that was the viral moment from my perspective too, but it was the same question. It was is this the issue that's going to drive the voters?
But one of us said on Wednesday morning, when we argued, we may be at war with Iran by the weekend, and no one will be talking about it.
Listen, Dan, you might be happy that this is not the issue, but all these things, they create a narrative that will not easily go away. It's like a
I get it, but you know what though, Rachel? Look, I hear you, but it goes to exactly the problem right now, which is that looks small compared to what's going on with a quasi world war. It's just that's the problem. It's just like the images out of Minnesota override, in Democrats' thinking, those images override Democrats not standing in a State of the Union.
But the Democrats are not offering any sort of solution.
Oh, of course.
That's going to be
Actually,
a
we have
major
so
problem.
many problems.
And that's the issue. But that was the ultimate downfall. I mean, besides, I think President Trump being President Trump, that was a huge problem for Kamala Harris in 2024.
100%.
And there's no main leader of the Democrat Party right now. There's no, unified messaging. There's no solutions. And that's ultimately, that's going to be a huge issue.
Look,
go ahead. I was going to say, maybe not. I mean, Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, I remember just a few cycles back, they had a disagreement on this. Mitch McConnell was like, we are not offering any solutions. This will all be about going up against Biden. That was the strategy. And then you had people Kevin McCarthy was like, no, we actually have to offer ideas. Dan, what's your thought on this?
Well, I think Ashley is 100% right. And I want to give credit to Melissa DeRosa for saying this, which is Democrats are winning because Republicans are losing. And Republicans are losing because everything seems chaotic right now. But it's not anything we're doing. It's not that we have a bunch of 80-20 issues, that we have these great ideas to speak to your problems. It's just Trump keeps screwing up with all this different, again, politically, I don't want to talk about other stuff, but you are right, Ashley. That is our problem, is that at the end of the day, voters could say, I don't like them, but you guys offer me nothing. So I'm going to go back to the shoe I know. Yeah,
totally. And that's why I like Democrats are going to do well in the midterms, but like long term, man, they got some serious problems as a party. Okay, guys, we are 1 minute over. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. She's going to be back tomorrow. So everybody get excited. We will be back tomorrow at 8:30. And hopefully we won't start texting you too early, Ashley. How was this morning, by the way?
Great. Perfect. No problem.
I was going to say, we didn't start texting until after 6, which is actually pretty late for us, Dan.
Well, I'm on the East. I'm on the West Coast. So I'm getting up at like 3:15. So that is earlier than my 4:30 at home in the East Coast. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you all back tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
See you guys.